Yeah.
Do you have any idea what trees in the southern United States are going to look like? Are they going to disappear entirely? Or are they going to go back to what the jungle?
Right. The question is what will happen in the southern United States. Well, those trees will migrate north too, but the magnitude of climate change there isn't going to be what it is here. The magnitude of climate change is bigger in the interior of the continent and further north, so they'll experience a smaller magnitude of change, and their species might only shift 100 or 150 miles. And that's a much more doable shift because it's not as long as the shifts we expect here. So they'll do okay there, and a lot of the southeast United States is actually predicted to get more rain. You know, this map is now a postage stamp, but this red zone here is like a 30% increase in rain in Virginia. So if you can imagine Virginia with the same temperature as southern Florida and much more rain, yeah, it might almost be subtropical. I'm not sure if the southern United States will become tropical rainforests. You know, if we have a really, really big magnitude of climate change, it could, but I don't think we're going to go quite that far. You know, that's not what predictions show, but you never know. We might be wrong on the low side instead of the high side. So these things are not completely certain. Yeah, any other? Yeah.
So I got a north slope with a bunch of really nice sugar maples, all about, you know, maybe 3 to 8 inches diameter and 20 to 30 feet tall. Are you saying they're all doomed, or?
Well, they're going to hang on a north slope longer than anywhere else. So give them a chance. Hope that the Asian longhorn beetle doesn't escape, and give them a chance. If it's a silty soil on a north slope, maybe they'll persist for 100 years. Yeah, and maybe we'll be successful at mitigating climate change too. You know, maybe our efforts to limit CO2 emissions will be successful, and maybe the magnitude of climate change will only be half of what it shows there. And, you know, so by having some maples still hanging around, you have the flexibility, and you have your oaks on the south slope, and have a variety of species. No matter what the climate does, something will be successful, right? Yeah.
So basically, there won't be any conifers around here, like,
no, well, the red cedar will probably hang on, but people aren't exactly fond of that species. One of the things I've noticed in talking to people down here is people aren't extremely fond of red cedar.
That might change.
It kind of creates it invades where people don't want it, I guess, and blocks the view and kills out the native prairie plants and so on. But the red cedar would still be good. Maybe the white pine will hang on a little bit on some of the siltier soils, because white pine is very tolerant of a wide range of climates. Its problem is that it can't regenerate with the deer, because the deer eat the seedlings. But if it can get past the deer, on north slopes it might still do okay. And right now you can grow it on south slopes, but in the future maybe it's going to switch to north slopes, right? In northern Minnesota, the boreal forest is going to go. There's no doubt about that. It's already going right now. Red maple is invading like crazy in the boreal forest, in the boundary waters. The jack pine black spruce, the true boreal there. Yeah.
If Phil Rudder gets his chestnuts going, are they going to make it in this climate if it's warmer?
Well, it'll be marginally in terms of dryness here, but again, north slopes and river bottoms for resistant chestnuts, and there are some disease-resistant chestnuts that are available now for the East Coast. You know, and they say the chestnut, is it the Chestnut Society? There's some organization. They say they're going to try to develop chestnuts for every different climate zone. They don't have one for us yet, but they've got one for the East Coast, and maybe they'll develop one for us. But again, in a warmer climate, it's going to be restricted to north slopes and silty soils.
Okay, so it's not going to be like a hackberry that doesn't care.
No. No, you know, it requires a pretty moist pretty moist conditions in the soil. Yeah, it will take years and then years.
Yeah, I want to ask you about those earthworms. Because I kind of heard a little bit about this before, but are you saying that there weren't earthworms here at all? And so all the earthworms that are here now are
European.
European?
Yes, yeah, that's right. There were no native earthworms in Minnesota. They're all from Europe.
All right. There were none in North America then?
There are some North American native earthworms, but they don't get this far north. You can find them in Des Moines.
So other than fishing, which I'm happy to do, catching earthworms, are there any strategies for like reducing earthworms?
Not that we've discovered yet. But, yeah, I mean, nothing that's legal, I should say.
Red-bellied snakes.
I mean, chlordane does a great job of killing earthworms, but it kills everything else in the forest, and it's illegal. You know, there is one thing that's happening with the earthworms is the Asian flatworm has been introduced to the United States, we think by accident. And flatworms, they're about that long, and they are kind of flat in cross-section. And they're a specific predator on earthworms. And they go right down in the burrows, and they're very nasty, very, very nasty little things. They grab a hold of the worms with a little suction cup, and they spray it with acid, and the worm dissolves, and then the flatworm sucks up the dissolved protein. Yeah, it's the closest thing on the planet to that creature on the movie Aliens, except we're lucky that it's only that big. But it's been found in Green Bay and Chicago, so I expect that it won't be long until it turns up here, and we don't know whether it will control earthworm populations or not. I guess it'll be interesting to see if that happens. But like most exotic species, when you move them to a different continent, their population goes way higher than in their native habitat. We're finding up to 1 million earthworms per acre in this area. You'd never find 1 million earthworms per acre in Europe where they're native. But that's characteristic of invasive species. You move them to a different continent, and whatever kept them under control in their native habitat isn't there. Yeah. Did you have a question?
I do. I'm curious what, and you touched on a little bit, what can the average person do? Not somebody who's planting trees, but somebody who just has a house on, a block of town. What can people do in order to help with, what you're projecting to help curb, this very...
Well, do everything you can to reduce your personal carbon footprint.
By what?
Well, fuel-efficient cars, better insulation in your house, efficient light bulbs, drive your car less, combine trips. Personally, I moved to downtown Minneapolis, and I have an 800-square-foot condominium, which has an electrical bill of $19 a month. And I do everything on foot. I drove my car here, but I only use my car when I go out of town. I know 50 people within a 4-block radius, so I can go and visit people, friends, all I want on foot. I even go to the grocery store on foot. So my carbon footprint is probably about 1/5 of what it is for most people.
But that's impossible for us to do here when most of us work.
Right. Well, you can
I'm talking about what
you can still carpool, get a more efficient car, and make sure you've got the most energy efficient light bulbs and appliances. You can still advocate for planting trees and carbon sequestration strategies. Using native grasses in western Minnesota as a biofuel, for example.
You call the governor's office and ask him to put the light rail back in Bonneville.
Right. Yeah, right. He vetoed his own proposal, which is very weird. Because he actually...
It's an election year.
It was his own proposal, but yeah, without that light rail line, there'll be like millions of extra tons of CO2 emitted per year, because all the people who would ride that are otherwise going to drive cars. So yeah, mass transit in in cities is one of the big ways to reduce the carbon footprint for the whole, our society as a whole. Yeah.
I'm taking off on her question, I think. Other than, the working on the overall thing with the global, with the carbon dioxide, just on an immediate level in your own acreage, say.
Right.
I guess what you're saying would be to try to favor these species that you're suggesting
Right.
there. And of those, it looks to me like, I don't know, somebody else, the bass would be the most commercially viable of those species that you listed off there.
It's the widest used in this area.
Yeah, basswood and, well, the oaks are still a good viability. I mean, if you can get them past the deer in the seedling stage, red oak is still going to be pretty good in this area. I'm not sure whether hackberry is used, but if the climate changes and we can only grow certain species of trees, the lumber mills will adapt. They always do.